Welcome to the March 22nd, 2021 meeting of the Winchester Select Board. My name is Michael Betancourt. I serve as chair. Joining me this evening is Vice Chair Susan Verdicchio, Mariano Goluboff, Jackie Welch, Town Manager Lisa Wong, Patty Mahay from our office, and Assistant Town Manager Mark Toogood. And Amy Shapiro is just coming in now. I'd like to begin by moving straight to the first agenda item under Section I, under the Select Board's Anti-Racism Task Force report, and recognize the horrific murders in Atlanta, 8 innocent victims. The Select Board in the town of Winchester stand in solidarity with its Asian American and Pacific Islander community in response to the recent attack. Any community where this hatred exists is a threat to our Asian Pacific Islander friends and family everywhere. We don't have to wait for law enforcement to determine whether this was a hate crime. It is by definition an act of hatred targeted at Asian American and Pacific Islander community. While the world has been struggling to confront an unprecedented pandemic, xenophobia and white supremacy has also afflicted our AAPI family. What is the most significant threat to our community at large is the short news cycle where we become too familiar with these atrocities and move from one to the other. To live in constant fear is not living in the world of freedom we promise each other. We must reconcile not only with our racism, but our culture's fascination with guns and the ability to take innocent life easier than we exercise our right to vote. The Asian American and Pacific Islander community and these 8 victims have done nothing to provoke this response, and we must come together as a community in solidarity to make a commitment to anti-racism that goes beyond just education, but action. As many of you know, this past summer, our select board meeting was attacked by white supremacists. In connection to the events in Atlanta, this was reported by the Boston Globe without factual accuracy. So it's important that we clear the record at the outset of our discussion. The Zoom bomber that invaded our meeting targeted us, and specifically our town manager, because of our recent commitment to anti-racism and the public agenda that was searchable on the internet. This was a coordinated effort by an internet network called Discord. This was not at all a participant in the meeting as reported, and the select board moved quickly to respond to the attack as a criminal matter. I immediately turned off my computer, as many of us did, called the town manager and members of the board, and we agreed to pursue the invasion as a criminal matter with law enforcement, later determining it to be a 17-year-old boy in Smyrna, Tennessee, who admitted to targeting us because of our racism discussion. Once we identified the perpetrator, we connected with local law enforcement and announced it at our meeting, identifying as a hate crime and condemning the assault. We have since continued our commitment to our anti-racism agenda and still have much work to do at the local level. White supremacy is a parasite that feeds on the confusion and fear that was intended with this action to scare our community and keep us from pursuing unity and solidarity here. At this juncture, we must not let these events define us, but most importantly, we must not let them divide us. At the very least, we owe this to the Asian American and Pacific Islander community and the innocent lives that were lost and those that continue to live in fear. Tomorrow evening, the select board in the town of Winchester joins our friends with the Chinese American Network and Network for Social Justice and the rest of the community to host a vigil at 7 p.m. at Mill Pond, just behind the library, to come together, unite, and stand in solidarity against the racism and violence that affects our community here and beyond. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes to speak on that. I know our agenda is packed, as I said, but I wanted to give each of the board members an opportunity to respond. I know that we all are really troubled by these events, and just to let you know, it was recently reported that another Zoom bomb attack, like the one that happened to us, happened to another local event for a school committee member. I mean, it's these things are going to continue to happen, and so it's important that we as a community come together. Please, any member of the board, feel free to jump in with comments or questions.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Please. Chairman, thank you. Yeah, the rise in violence against Asian Americans over the past year is very concerning. And surprisingly, it follows an escalation in hate speech that some national politicians were using last year. But this is not just a problem that happens somewhere else. Right here in Winchester, we had a resident who also happens to be appointed to the Committee on Government Regulations who used an anti-Asian slur at last spring's town meeting. It is unacceptable. How can our residents trust that local government works for them when appointed members use hate speech? Being appointed to a board is a privilege and one that shouldn't be given to someone who openly uses bigoted language. I hope everyone will join me in calling for the moderator who makes appointments to the Committee on Government Regulations to appoint someone else to that committee who does not openly use hate speech.
Thanks, Mariano. And just to kind of let the community know, one of the and we had this, you and I had this conversation back, I think in right after the attack about this idea of kind of removal and things like that. What we did is we triggered a charter review where the town is going to be engaged in evaluating what our options are for our town meeting session to either censure someone or to move them out of town meeting if these things continue. It's completely unacceptable. I really appreciate your comments on removing someone from the government regulations committee or any committee of town meeting. It sometimes has less of an effect as an oversight committee than a legislative committee. But the point is that there has to be a consequence. And I think town meeting needs to make a decision about the values that we all share. And I think that it was quite shocking to town meeting, and and I know that it's important for us to move forward and create a new set of rules of engagement for us at town meeting. So thank you, and sorry to cut in again, but if anybody else wants to jump in.
Mr. Chair, I was going to ask if you wanted, if you were going to read it, the resolution, or you wanted me to read it.
Please, yeah, I wanted to, certainly we can get to the resolution, and if there's any other comments anybody wanted to make. I know I'm talking too much.
I'll wait then.
No, if anybody wants to go in, and then Susan can read the resolution.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Sort of. Yeah, sorry about I had a statement I just wanted to read quickly. So first and foremost, I want to express my personal feelings of sadness, anger, and frustration, and to let our Asian American and Pacific Islander neighbors know that I stand with them against racism. Racism can be overt, and as we've seen over the past year with the egregious violence, murder, and hate speech, or it can be more subtle, as in a passing comment or the use of the term China virus. But both hurt and both are wrong and should not be tolerated at any level. And it is on all of us to make sure it never happens in Winchester and that our AAPI neighbors feel safe and supported. And the critical thing that we adults cannot ignore is how this is affecting our children. In June of 2020, a Winchester high school student, Alex Lee, wrote a piece called Not American Yet for the student editorial contest in the New York Times and was one of the winners. In his piece, he talked about a situation during which his friend was called coronavirus by other students. This happened within the walls of Winchester High School. And this is not a judgment on the schools. In fact, I've been super impressed with the response by school leaders, including James Lynn, who's the principal of the middle school, who's hosting a meeting tomorrow at 4 for all students to come together to share their thoughts and feelings, ask questions, support each other, and listen to each other, talk about the hate incidents targeting AAPI people happening across the country. But reading Alex's piece was a stark reminder that racism is something like hair or eye color that is too often passed down from generation to generation. To break this cycle, we must be inquisitive, be open, be respectful, and be kind to one another. We can do this, and we should demand nothing less from those around us. I have much faith and belief in Winchester and our ability to overcome even the most difficult of challenges. Thank you.
I just wanted to quickly reiterate everything that my esteemed colleagues have indicated. I certainly am in agreement with all the comments that have been so beautifully stated with such earnestness and fortitude. Thank you.
And I guess I would say that I would like to add that something that this pandemic-related outbreak of first racial slurs and speech that led to violence shows me the critical need for white people to learn how to and practice allyship. Words matter, and racist speech impacts the climate of a community or a nation. And I've learned that it's not enough that, you know, if you hear some kind of casual racist comment, to think, well, I just won't dignify that with a response. You know, I'm just going to let that go by, and we're going to move on to something else, and I'm not going to amplify that. That's not good enough. Silence sends a message of permission and possibly even of agreement. And I have to commit myself to learning and being a better ally, because that's what has, you know, we watch this happen. And I think as a community, we're looking for things to do. And I think that's something that we can commit to doing.
Thanks, Susan. We also had circulated a draft of a statement from the board, and something for other elected officials, community leaders, and just residents to sign on to if they choose. Susan, I didn't know if you wanted to read that.
Okay.
No.
Yep. So it says that the town of Winchester stands in solidarity with its Asian American and Pacific Islander community in response to the recent attacks in Atlanta. We want to raise awareness of the dangerous historic increase in incidents and assaults directed against AAPI communities since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, and to acknowledge the pain and fear that is so palpable right now. We also want to acknowledge that anti-Asian racism existed in the US for centuries before the pandemic, and that the historic power of white supremacy has created structural hierarchies which can divide communities. By continuing to treat the fight against white supremacy as separate battles, by isolating the AAPI community as experiencing different impacts outside the discrimination faced by others, we allow the system to continue to divide us. We really have one common enemy, the racism that is embedded in our culture and society. By being in solidarity with each other against all forms of racism, we are asserting our shared humanity and creating a space for healing. Last summer, in the wake of the murder of George Floyd and the flood of grief and protests across the country, the town of Winchester penned a joint statement on racism and police brutality, reaffirming our core values and our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and pledging to become a more anti-racist community. Since June, many actions have been taken. The Select Board committed to acknowledging the original indigenous inhabitants of this land. Communities of faith have discussed and reflected on the origins and impacts of racism and have created book groups to enhance awareness, and local nonprofits have brought in social justice educators and have offered community conversations on anti-racist practices. We appreciate these actions, and we must commit to coordinating and continuing this work, including addressing Asian American racism and xenophobia. We must start by calling out by anti-Asian language, including any reference to COVID-19 that encourages blaming and shaming Asians. We can also commit to learning about the long history of anti-Asian discrimination and repression in the United States, to challenging stereotypes, including the myth of the model minority, and to learning more about Asian cultures. We must report incidents of threats or harassment. As Town Manager Lisa Wong and Police Chief Daniel O'Connell noted in their recent statement, Winchester is not immune to incidents of bias-motivated conduct, and many hate crimes against Asians can go unreported. The website Stop AAPI Hate has an easily accessible reporting mechanism in many languages and important recommendations for action. Now is the time to fully realize our responsibility as individuals and as a collective to address this epidemic of racism. Winchester Select Board invites community leaders and town residents to join us as we move forward. Together, let's imagine what is possible when we act in solidarity as collaborators against hate.
Thanks, Susan. So I think at this point, I move that the board supports the statement, and certainly if there's any other changes as we go along to it on a rolling basis, we can do that. But I think it's important that we issue this as a press release and we support it. And so So I move that we do that. If there's a second, we can take a vote.
Second,
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie,
yes.
Mariano,
Yes.
Amy, Susan.
Yes.
Amy, thanks. I appreciate it. We got you. We got you. Yes, and yes for me. Motion carries unanimously of 5-0. So we'll issue this as a press release, and we'll issue this online as well, as we said, so other people can sign on as they wish and comment. And another reminder that there's a vigil tomorrow night just behind the library at Mill Pond at 7 p.m. So all are welcome to attend, and we'll be careful to social distance and all of that as well. So thank you again for everyone here for indulging the board. It's a real priority for us to publicly address issues like this that affect our community. But I will try to move through the agenda as quickly as possible. So just a quick notification of our upcoming meetings. Monday, April 5th in a regular session is our next meeting. And then after that, the next scheduled one is April 12th. So we'll move to the acceptance of donations and then move down to our business items.
So I move that we accept with gratitude an in-kind donation from the Palladino family to the Recreation Department of 45 cubic feet of soil to be used to create a teachable garden for the new planting and horticultural program.
Second,
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie,
yes.
Mariano,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
and yes for me. Motion
And I
carries
move,
5-0.
sorry.
Sorry.
And I move we accept with gratitude an in-kind donation from Winchester Together, also to the Recreation Department, of 8 $25 gift cards to local businesses to be used as prizes in the Recreation's esports gaming program.
Second,
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie,
yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Mariano,
Yes.
and yes for me. Motion carries unanimously 5-0.
I move we accept with gratitude a donation of $3,000 from Jay Crawford to purchase a memorial bench and tree to be placed at Wildwood Cemetery.
Second,
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie,
yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Mariano,
Yes.
and yes for me. Motion carries unanimously 5-0.
And I move that we accept with gratitude a Cultural District Initiative grant of $7,500 from the Massachusetts Cultural Council to the town of Winchester for the Winchester Cultural Council.
Second,
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie,
yes.
Mariano,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
and yes for me. Motion carries unanimously 5-0. And thank you for going through those. I know we're busy, but it's important that people see the generosity at the front of our meeting rather than, if we push it towards the end and there is less viewership. So it's very, very generous of those donations and those donors. So thank you. So I think we'll quickly move to the MBTA deadline extension. I think Angel is here, business item 2. Hey, Angel, how are you?
Good. How are you, Mr. Chairman?
Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. And other members of the board, great to see you as well. Mr. Chairman, if it's all right, if do you want me to start now?
Please.
I have a very quick presentation that I submitted just for folks, and I'm happy to walk through that if people want it up on the screen.
Sure, if you want to do that.
Yep.
Sure.
I will share my screen. Can folks see my screen?
Yes.
Yep, see it there. Yep.
All right. So very quickly, it's a very short presentation, just providing updates and just some photos of some of the demolition work that we've done with, I guess, the official ask to get a license extension as we had discussed. So just quick update, as I mentioned, again, a rendering of what the new station will look like. We've begun demolition work over at Winchester. And as you can see here on the slide, things are progressing nicely. These photos were taken as of last week, and some of the ramps and canopies have continued to come down. We've broken down the work into 4 different phases, and you'll see in a high-level overview of the schedule what we've been accomplishing over the last week and what we anticipate will be the completion of this phase of the project. Again, some more photos around the canopy and some of the demo work that we've done around the station, and some work that we've done on Laraway Road. And here's the updated project schedule, as you asked, Mr. Chairman, from the last meeting, just a high-level overview of the different phases. So the phase 1 was mobilization, and then we anticipate that we'll have completion based with this extension by the end of May. Heavy work is expected to be completed in the middle of May, and then we just expect the last 2 weeks to be more of demobilizing and finishing work that is not going to be as intrusive as we're dealing with now. And then the last slide, I guess, here is the license extension request through May 31st. And just, I think we've kind of quickly have talked about some of the reasons why we had asked for the request. The first one is unanticipated delays mobilizing and some complications that we dealt with. We bumped this into some weather issues and snowstorms in early February. And then we ran into some issues with limited track outage time that we needed. And those are some of the reasons for asking for the extension. And then lastly, Mr. Chairman, just an update on the schedule of the actual construction. Advertising sometime this spring, and we anticipate the award of the contract to happen sometime this summer, and then potential construction phase in the fall with anticipated completion in winter of 2024. So it's about a 2.5 year project, give or take. So that's just a quick overview of where we're at. And then again, our official request for the license extension. And I'm happy to take any questions and that the members of the board or you may have.
Thanks, Angel. Any questions, comments? Okay. We can move forward with a motion to approve the extension.
So I move that we approve an extension to the license for demolishing the town center train station to May 31st.
Second,
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie,
yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Mariano,
Yes.
and yes for me. Motion carries unanimously, 5-0. Thanks again, Angel. We appreciate you coming in and working with us on this project, and we'll look forward to regular updates as we move along.
Yeah, I look forward to it, and I appreciate everyone's patience throughout the process, and appreciate your support and continued dialogue over the next couple of months.
Thank you for the detailed slides. They're very helpful.
Happy they were helpful. And again, Mr. Chairman, and any member of the board, if there's any questions or anything, I'm happy to make myself available to anybody whenever you need it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angel. Appreciate it.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll see you soon. So we're just going to continue to move down the agenda, and Swim Winchester, I think, is the next one, number 3, if Amanda is here. Hey, Amanda, how are you?
Hi, I'm here. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate the coming in for the update on a busy night here. And I think that you had a short slide deck for us. Maybe Patty has it available. So there you go.
Hi.
Mhm.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you tonight. Yes, I think Patty has it available. Right. So I just wanted to come tonight. Thank you all so much for your continued support of our work. We wanted to just give you a 6-month update as promised. I was last before you in September, just to give you a very brief update, because we were certainly, we all had more important things at that time to think about. but we're back to work on trying to get this lovely resource for our town. And I'll just go through the deck quickly because I know you have a heavy agenda tonight. But just a quick reminder of who we are and what we're about. We're a group that's working very closely with the town to try to give the town a community pool. We're a nonprofit. We are working to do a private-public partnership with the town. And the goal, of course, is to create a pool and to have a place to swim and to be together and have it be widely accessible to all, and to have it be affordable and a welcoming facility in our town. Next slide, please. Just to remind you again very quickly of our history, we've been working at this since about 2014, and we have taken a very methodical approach. We are just volunteers, and we need a lot of expert guidance, and so that is what we have done over the years. We have sought that expert guidance. We have done fundraising for some excellent studies, one of which was the feasibility study, which determined a lot about the project way back in the beginning in 2014. And if you jump ahead to the last bullet here, you'll see that we are working now to redo that feasibility study. And we engaged the aquatic consulting firm Isaac Sports Group in October. And we've been working very, very closely with them with weekly meetings and been getting a lot done. Next slide, please. So in the last 6 months, we've hired Isaac Sports Group, headed by Stu Isaac, with support from Water Technology, which is an aquatic engineering group, to update the feasibility study. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. We're right now just completing the phase 1 work, which is an analysis of the design and programming. We've been working with focus groups. So we're hearing from community members about what it is that they want this facility to be. And then we've also been talking to potential partners. I just wanted to mention that we have a new board member who is a co-founder of the Chinese American Network of Winchester, Jifeng Liu, and we're very happy to have him join us. And we've been continuing to do some fundraising. Next slide, please. The feasibility study that we're doing right now with Stu Isaac has 2 parts to it. The part that we're finishing right now has been focused on programming and design. The part that we are planning to begin in April will be a very detailed cost analysis. As you recall, we did this in 2014, and our community has changed a lot since that time. And of course, you know, the financial picture is going to look a lot different. So this is going to be a very, it's already proving to be a very worthwhile exercise. It has been wonderful to meet with all of these community members. I'm hoping to, you know, really continue to meet with more of them. But so far so good. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick overview of some of the focus groups that we've run so far. The focus groups have been fantastic because it's our opportunity to really hear from people who live in town what it is they want this to be, what is best going to serve their needs. So we had a meeting with families with young children. We met with older adults and seniors. We met with special needs adaptive swimming group, master swimmers, high school families, just in general, because this is really going to benefit the whole high school, not just the swim teams. And then we had a meeting with some folks focused on sustainability. And we'll continue to have some more, and maybe even repeat some of these groups as well, because each group is typically anywhere from 3 to maybe 12 people. Next slide, please. In addition, partnerships are going to be very important to making this work. These will be partnerships that will, financial partnership could be part of it, but there are a lot of ways we can collaborate. And so we've been talking to the Jank Center, Winchester Hospital, Swim Angelfish, the Gables, the Rec Department, of course, Chamber of Commerce, and various town leaders. And the conversations are ongoing and very, very important to us. Next slide, please. Wanted to just tell you a little bit about some of the design it's just at a very basic level that we're talking about right now. There are essentially 2 pools that were part of the design back in 2014 that are still intrinsic to the conversation. A lane pool, which will be a 25-yard pool, probably with 8 lanes, and that will be about 81 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's for training, competition, recreation. Then we would have what's called a leisure pool, which would be a warmer water pool, also for swim lessons, for exercise classes, for family-friendly leisure, and so forth. The third pool that has entered the conversation as well is a therapy pool. We have realized by talking to Winchester Hospital, the Gables, and others, that this is something that they would very much like to have. But we would have to do some special fundraising to make this a part of the project, of course. And this would be a much warmer pool, 92 degrees, that was really specialized on therapy, rehab, physical therapy. Next slide, please. So the programming basics, and again, just broad brush strokes here, but from the phase 1 work, we've developed a schedule matrix, which I think is going to be incredibly helpful for understanding how to keep the pool busy and what activities will be happening in the pool when. And so Stu Isaac has been putting that together for us. And it's all color coded and incredibly complicated for different times of the year and seasonal activities as well. But it's going to be very helpful. Next slide, please. Just wanted to reiterate again that the point of this is to have it be a community center in many ways. It is not really for one particular group. It is something that the goal here is to have it be wide-ranging and inclusive, to have it be linked to the schools and community organizations, to have this be a place where there's opportunity for volunteerism, intergenerational opportunities, that it will be a social gathering space, and a potential increase to commerce in town as well. Next slide, please. So the projected timeline and next steps, we're hoping to begin phase 2 of this study in April. Phase 2 is going to give us a detailed financial picture of the project with information about budget projections and what we're going to have to raise for the capital campaign, and other things like what the membership is going to cost each family. The RFP process will be part of what we do next as well. And we are hoping to choose an architectural design firm to do the advanced concept drawings. We'll continue to have public meetings and focus groups. We'll continue to work closely with the town. We will explore and analyze management options for managing the facility, and then 3.5 to 5 years until opening. So that, I think is that the last slide? Yeah. So that's the last slide, and thank you very much. We're happy to come before you tonight and tell you a little bit about what we've been working hard on, and happy to take any questions should you have any.
Thank you, Amanda. Really appreciate you coming in to update us on all the hard work. We know this is, a big project and very complicated, and it's going to take a a little bit longer to get it done. But the board, when we approved the location there, we had asked that you come in and do these regular updates to us. So we appreciate you respecting that request from the board and honoring that. So any other comments from members of the select board?
I just wanted to also echo the chair's comments. Thank you so much for all your hard work with your committee. I mean, the fact that this is all done on a voluntary basis is amazing because your, very professional presentations seem more like you're a consultant or something. They're so impressively done and so comprehensive. And I'm sure that if anyone wants to see pictures of the renderings and elevations and that sort of thing, they just go on your website. Pictures are beautiful. And thank you again.
You're welcome. And we're hoping to have new pictures and new renderings soon as well.
Thanks, Amanda. We appreciate it. And hopefully we'll hear more from you soon, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
We're moving on to agenda item 4, the transfer station update. I think we've got a few folks here on that one. I think Jim Johnson from Capital Planning, Roger McPeak, and Jay Gill, maybe if Jay is here.
Mr. Chairman, while everybody gets brought in for the transfer station update, can I have 2 minutes?
Of course.
I just want to thank Ms. Jackie Welch for her service to the town. This is her last meeting on the select board. She's been serving the select board for the last 3 years, but before that, she was on the planning board for, I believe, was it 2 or 3 terms? Was many years.
Yeah.
And as we all know here, the time that sitting on these boards is volunteer time, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of dedication. And I just want to thank her on her last meeting, and just a round of applause for Jackie for having served with us. And good luck with all the additional time you will have on Monday evenings in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, I echo that, Mariano. We appreciate it. And the board does have a gift for you as well. It's, one of the hard things about not seeing all of us in person, that we'll have to connect with you at some other point. But just personally, thank you for all your service. I think a lot of people don't see how much work this is beyond these public meetings, and how much work that you do, and commitment, from for you, for the community, and from for your family, and the service from your family as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I know we have a very full agenda. Thank you so much, Mr. Goloboff and Mr. Betancourt. I'll just very briefly say it is such an honor and privilege to represent the town. It's also a particular privilege to represent the town with my wonderful colleagues on the board. I think that we get along extremely well, both personally and professionally. We always try to make sure that our comments are efficient but constructive, and sort of advance the town in any way we can. And it's been such an honor to work with our town manager, Ms. Wong. She's extremely professional. I find her incredibly inspiring to me with her high standards and her dedication to the town. So even though my tenure on the board hasn't included all the time she's been town manager, it's certainly been such a privilege and honor, and truly a highlight. Also, I wanted to thank everyone in the town manager's office. I'm a member of the bar and a partner at Morrison Mahoney in Boston, and I will be able to spend a little bit more time with some bar association activities, but I'll never forget my time on behalf of the town on the select board and other boards. And I know that whoever replaces me is going to bring a great voice to the board. So thank you very much, and happy to go further with our agenda for this evening, but it was very gracious of you, Mr. Goloboff and Mr. Betancourt. Thank you so much.
Right. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate. I know that we all would want to kind of have extended appreciation, but we have packed things, and I think I've been talking too much, so we're a little bit behind. So welcome, Jay and crew. And I think that there is Lee and Jamie are here from Weston and Sampson to present as well.
Sorry, I got a call from Nick Parley just letting me know that I was up here. Can everyone see me and hear me?
Yes, thank you, Jamie.
All right. Share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen here?
Yep.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's great to speak with everyone this evening to provide an update on the Winchester transfer station design. My name is Lee Koska, and I'm joined tonight by my colleague, Jamie Fair. In close collaboration with Mark Toogood, Meg White, Jay Gill, and Nick Parley, we have been advancing the previously presented conceptual improvements to the transfer station that seek to improve both efficiency and safety for the facility, as well as promoting a better experience for the townspeople and facility workers. So tonight I'll be walking you through the proposed potential layout updates, starting when you first arrive at the entrance gate down here. Note that this is a 30% design presentation, so we'll be doing additional vetting of the various design components in future design phases. We do have a lot of ground to cover, but as always, please let me know if you have any questions during this walkthrough presentation. So we're going to be starting down at the bottom left of the figure where you enter the facility off of McKay Ave. We're then going to circle counterclockwise through the facility. And I'll be going through the proposed improvements in kind of the general order as you run into them on the right as you move through the facility here. So as you first pull into the transfer station, we've proposed an automated license plate reader system, which is going to be located along the entrance gate to the facility. This system would scan the license plates of incoming cars and confirm their current permitting with the attendant at the scale house. You'll notice the scale house shown here has been shifted across the scale from its current location. This provides a better field of view of all the incoming vehicles to the facility. And we've also constructed a new parking area, or proposed constructing a new parking area down at this portion of the site with parking spaces for employees, business, or visitor parking, and also including an ADA compliant parking space. Universal waste and tire drop-offs shown on this pad here are two of the accepted materials that tend to have the most questions for the staff at the facility. So we proposed relocating them right next to the new parking area for convenience and ease of monitoring by the attendant at the scale house. An additional note, the pavement throughout the entire facility in this eastern portion, which is shown by the dark gray color here, that is proposed to be replaced because it's significantly degraded over the years. So in addition to the pavement, as you pull into the facility, you'll note that the current white goods area located in this portion of the site has been converted into a new recycling compactor location with a sawtooth retaining wall, little zigzag shown here. That design relocates the current compactors, which are currently near the incinerator up at the top and down at the lower portion of the site, to one centralized location. This location can also act as a satellite food waste accumulation area, but we note that that item is separate. The food waste operations aren't directly tied to uses in the recycling area. This is just one potential location that a satellite food waste drop-off location could be located. We'll be discussing food waste options again later in the presentation. The discussions with various vendors are currently ongoing, and they're outside the scope of this preliminary design, but they may be pursued further through separate procurement in the future. So speaking to the recycling area itself, in this configuration, the residents can drop their recycling into top-loading compactors from a concrete walkway that's located at the top portion of the retaining wall I mentioned. That configuration keeps residents away from both incoming traffic flows in these inlet lanes, as well as truck traffic exiting the lower portion of the facility. The wall will be raised somewhat above the surrounding grade with safety railings and appropriate signage in place. One bay of this area, shown here at the end, has been reserved for a roll-off container that can be used for either metal drop-off or other recycling or waste streams as needed. And additionally, the final bay of this area, shown up here, has been set aside for commercial recycling drop-off from larger trucks, which currently don't have a dedicated location for unloading at the facility. A centralized control booth, the little red dot shown here, will improve operator efficiency because the attendant for this area would no longer have to rotate between multiple compactor locations, both up at the top near the incinerator building and down below. And the location of the booth there also provides a clear field of view of the entire recycling area for safety. One thing I want to mention as well, the sawtooth configuration as shown here has future-proofed this area somewhat in that future, updates or alterations to the facility layout would accommodate use of any of these spaces for roll-offs that could be used for other waste streams rather than the recycling compactors as shown here. So as we continue on through the transfer station, you'll note that on the right, the current incinerator building is proposed for abatement and demolition. To reduce the costs associated with the removal of the structure, the current design calls for reuse of portions of the exterior foundation wall along this side of it, as well as the current slab in the basement of the building for future use as a roll-off staging area. Note that this area can be further utilized as part of future upgrades. There are a number of options that can be pursued on down the line, either for additional recycling compactors, relocating the ones here or adding additional capacity, or for transfer of waste to roll-off containers down at the bottom of the wall through chutes for other waste streams, mattresses, anything basically that could be placed into a roll-off can be loaded at a future date from on top of the wall. Another note on the overall demolition and abatement, it includes an environmental component through removal of hazardous materials that remain in interior portions of the building, as well as disposal of residual ash and solid waste that are left over from during the facility's operating lifetime. Another thing to mention about this building, the existing electrical connection is currently housed in the portion of the building shown right here. The current design seeks to relocate this electrical connection to a small annex building off of the main transfer station building. There are a number of reasons for this. Primarily, it'll give a new location that protects those systems adequately. And from that location, it will feed out to all of the other proposed areas for improvement, including the recycling area and various utility poles shown throughout the site for both lighting and security features as needed. Another note on this, the current location where it's housed is falling into increased state of disrepair due to non-use. And the panels themselves are very outdated. They're considered a fire hazard currently. So replacement of that equipment to a dedicated area outside of the incinerator building will also seek to improve safety for the workers and users of the transfer station. Although it's not specifically shown in the figure, there are various upgrades and repairs proposed to the transfer station building itself and the associated conveyor. This includes items such as the new roof, facade repairs and painting, and various other upgrades to the interior and the existing compactors in the basement of this building. Discussions and vetting of these various improvements are ongoing with a number of vendors, and the design of that will continue throughout the future design phases. So moving on from the transfer building itself, as you start to enter the outbound lane for the facility, you'll note that on your right, you pass what's the current construction material drop-off area. Proposed improvements in this area include a new concrete pad and a covered awning to comply with current stormwater regulations for the storage of these materials. And further past this location, next to the current existing swap shop area, you'll note the proposed food waste shed. Jay Gill and Nick Parlee have been in a number of ongoing conversations with various third-party vendors about the use of this area. And should a beneficial arrangement be identified, this area will be primed for use via a overhead connection to the closest utility pole shown here. And that will support potential future operations by a third party using this space. As you continue out of the facility, there are a series of new pads located adjacent to the compact area, or compost area rather, as shown here. These can act as a new reception location for e-wastes, white goods, propane tanks, and other hard to manage items. A locked fence and a gate would prevent access to portions of this pad during facility off hours or when an attendant is not present. Additionally, a series of bays for loam, wood chips, salt, and sands are proposed along the southern side of the facility, next to the compost area for public use. Finally, as you exit the facility, we've proposed a new staff trailer with a break room and restroom facilities for the town employees. This location can be tied directly into existing utility infrastructure at the entrance in McKay Ave, and it would act as a much needed interior location for employee use. One thing with this that I haven't really touched on is existing operations that are largely unchanged. This includes the compost area for yard waste, existing donation bins, and some of the existing parking areas in the center of the site. Also the overall compactor and transfer facility building beyond the upgrades and repairs that I mentioned are still going to be kept with the same layout and used in the same manner that they are currently. Overall, the current levels of service are maintained through this layout or they're improved through the various improvements and potential acceptance of additional waste streams in the future. So that gives you the run through of the current facility layout. As I mentioned previously, this design represents a 30% layout submittal. Going along with this, we've internally updated our cost estimate based on the assessment work and design activities that have been completed to date. The preliminary range that we're looking at, including all of the updates as proposed, is tending towards the $3.5 million to $4 million for this particular proposed design. I want to note that an independent cost estimate is ongoing, with results expected from that assessment in the coming weeks to further fine-tune the current assumed costs on our end. I know this is somewhat increased from the previously presented range. This has arisen from the results of the subsurface and pavement quality conditions that we identified in our geotech drilling program that we did this winter, as well as various additional updates arising from kind of the continued design activities as this has progressed. Also, the preliminary numbers from last year were based on the escalation of previous transfer studies, or transfer station studies rather, and those were completed prior to any of the current design activities for the proposed updates as shown. We're looking into ways of phasing the project and potential items that may be separated for future upgrade rounds to reduce that current price point and still provide the maximum benefits from a usability standpoint. These divisions of how it's currently proposed will be further assessed in the future design phase. Additionally, I did want to note that we've seen a good amount of increased market volatility in the last few months. That's impacted all sectors of the construction market and is going to further increase project costs for any kind of public project like this across the state. Jamie Fair, who's on the call with me as well, will speak further to this point and kind of give you a run through of what we've been seeing on similar projects to the proposed transfer station upgrades as shown.
Thank you, Lee. I'll just touch on what we're seeing in the current market. And we've had some projects go out to bid recently, and we're seeing the bid prices spiking up rather high. And what we're finding is that it's related to, on the manufacturing side, things slowed down with the pandemic. And so we had less production of materials, steel and lumber are some big items that are factoring into this. And now we're seeing increased economic activity. And with that, we have a lower supply. And so costs are being driven up due to that scenario. It wasn't too long ago when we were seeing good prices. The economy was down, people were looking for work, and there was still enough materials and equipment on the supply side. But it's swung the other way now. We had a project come in 20% higher than the cost estimate, and then another one even higher than that. We've been talking with cost estimators and contractors to, get a better feeling for things. And what they're saying is that, transportation and shipping costs have increased due to fuel costs rising, and they're seeing price increases on the order of 20 to 25% there. Lumber is up 30 to 50% due to the issues on the supply side and increased demand. Steel is a similar range of 15 to 20%. Labor is up 10%. So everything's spiking up right now. We're hoping that this is sort of a temporary blip as we're sort of moving out of the pandemic phase, and that things will stabilize on the supply side and the demand side. But right now, this is what we're seeing, unfortunately, and it's something that we're going to continue to watch.
Great, thank you, Jamie and Lee. I know Jay Gill is here, Nick Parley. I don't know if you have any comments, Jay. We might have to cut your hot tub out of the plan. Sounds like costs are coming up.
That's in the dog pond. It's fine.
It might be a kiddie pool. We'll see.
Exactly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank Weston Sampson on a great report. As you know, it's only at 30%. I do believe as we see the numbers are going up because of many reasons, as Jamie just said, I think we need to look at getting the next phase of getting to 100% design cost. I think that will be the next step to try to get this to 100%, to really get these estimates fine-tuned. We're still getting estimates coming in. We're going to look at Weston Sampson to give us a proposal to get us to 100%. Then hopefully we get really, the numbers get down to where we feel like we have a good handle on the costs. Nick, do you have anything to say?
No, not at this time.
Just so you know, sorry, Mr. Chairman, just on the food waste part, this shouldn't disrupt us moving forward. Nick and I have talked to 3 vendors. We're actually going to go on little, go around and look at these sites that other communities have and report back. Then myself, Nick and Leanne McGann will do a request for proposals and hopefully have something, hopefully by the summer.
Great, thanks, Jay. I know it's important to the project, and we've also received quite a bit of analysis from the Finance Committee, who is really looking into ways to bring in some more commercial revenue, offset costs, and so I think it's a good time for us to continue the conversation. And as with most of these projects, we kind of start off with the design and engineering, and then kind of move on to the next phase. I guess that's the kind of the question before the board now, to move forward at town meeting with the design and engineering, and then come back in the fall for construction dollars. Mark, I don't know if you have that information.
Yes, the current warrant article, the way it's drafted, because we were planning on going to town meeting for engineering and construction dollars. What Jay and I would recommend at this point, based on tonight's presentation, is to modify the article, working with Jay Gonzalez, so that we'd be seeking a borrowing authorization for the engineering, and then going to the fall town meeting for the construction funding, and then kind of rolling it all together, basically, at that point as one project. We really feel that taking that extra time, based on a lot of unknowns, the fact that we're only at 30%, and with what's going on in the market, there's a little too much risk at this point in time, and we feel that we're not really going to lose too much time by taking this extra step. So that's what we're recommending, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Mark. And I see that Jim Johnson and Roger McPeak are here as well. So it's always the question of on the capital side, is there any avenue there for us to draw on some funds to offset the overall cost? And so Jim or Roger, feel free to jump in on the project. Yeah, Jim, feel free to unmute and come on if you, or Roger.
I'll take a shot at it. It depends at the level of $4 million. We're certainly not able to do anything through the stabilization funds at that. If depending on the way that the project gets put together, there was a mention of things being phased. There might be some ability of the stabilization funds to pick up some of it, but overall, the big concern is where the really large dollars would come from.
Great, thanks, Roger. So that would, probably be a borrowing and then an increase in fees over a period of time. Is that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is Jim.
Hey, Jim, how are you?
As you know, this addresses some of our criterias. It deals with the general public health of the community. It deals with the public safety aspect of the community, making Winchester a safe place, a better place. We would look and evaluate any and all proposals like we have in the past, and are looking for additional funds through the Board of Selectmen to subsidize capital stabilization fund. We're open to any and all offers. I know there's been some discussion. I would like to recall to everybody's mind that this was a project started 15 to 20 years ago, and it sort of got sidetracked with the very fortunate luck we had of it having the landfill recapped, and that provided a great asset to the town, saved the town millions of dollars, because it's based upon a 1978 recapping rather than up to date. And this is a continuation of that plan. Basically, it's been updated, it looks good, and I would suggest that we all work towards a common good, and that's to get it done. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Roger, and everyone. Questions from members of the board?
Yeah. So just one comment on the design. It looks like behind the incinerator retaining wall where the recycling is right now, looks like there's a lot of empty space there. And so I was wondering if we could consider the food waste shed being in that area. That way to encourage people to put food waste when they go with the recycling as well, and they don't have to go next to the swap shop for that. As far as the funding, so the article for town meeting doesn't say what the funding source is, at least for the engineering. What's our plan for that motion?
The Mariano, it's a borrowing authorization. It's a general obligation funding authorization. So it would not come from one of the stabilization funds. It would be from the general fund. And the idea, I think, originally was that would come from the additional fees that were going to be charged at the transfer station. That was my understanding anyway.
Okay, so we would put a surcharge on the permit fees, and
yes.
I mean, what I would like to do is break out, like, what I mean, and we have until November or so to decide on the permit fees, but I would like to break out a separate fee, capital, improvement fee or something. That way, 5-10 years down the line, whenever it's paid off, whoever sits on this board then remembers to take it off.
Yes.
And part of the option with food waste for us is similar to how it was with recycling 10-20 years ago, right, where we were getting additional revenue from stuff that was being discarded that would then be pulled out of our waste stream, and so that's part of the strategy there too.
That's right, Mr. Chairman. It's Jay again. You're correct. Nick and I and staff are coming up with other opportunities for us to make more revenue, which we'll be bringing forward in the future to this board.
Thanks, Jay. Amy?
Yeah, I had one question on the design and one question on funding as well. So just the traffic pattern, I'm just wondering, it looks as if it would be hard if you're just going to recycling, for instance, and you want to get out of there. It seems to me that it would be a hard kind of U-turn to make. So that is one question I have. And then the other thought, and maybe this is a question for Nick and Jay, are there any opportunities for grants that we could look at, since we're making such significant improvements, and I think probably they're going to be much improved for the environment as well, and I'm wondering if there's any opportunities there.
Yeah, I'll have Nick answer the grant question. On the first question on the flow of traffic, we looked at this for many years to try to redesign the flow. We actually had a design where we came behind the incinerator building and go up to the backside of the tipping building there and up to the right. The elevation and the cost to do that, it's very expensive. I think, Amy, people are used to this flow. We do have more compact to try to make it more, user-friendly and quicker to get you out of the first phase of, going to the recycling, then going to the, to the tipping building. But we can look at it. We can still look at it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think people are used to it. I'm just thinking if there's like a little bit of a turnaround area.
Yeah.
Just so it's not such a tight turn, but thanks.
You're welcome.
Yep.
Nick, when you talk about the grants?
In terms of grants, in terms of the state level for waste reduction, at current grant levels, providing for all the communities of Massachusetts, I think you'd be hard pressed to get a meaningfully sized grant. In terms of environmental remediation project, that's a little outside of my wheelhouse. I think, this would qualify as a remediation project, particularly with the incinerator and some of the land contouring we're doing there. But I think we'd have to look into that a little deeper.
And we also look out, talk to Senator Lewis and Representative Day to see if there's any funding for some type of project like this.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up question on that? I don't know if Amy got her other questions answered. It sounded like she did, but thank you so much again for all of your hard work. This is such an important project for the town. I really appreciated Mr. Johnson's comments about really what it kind of exemplifies and represents for the town, particularly because most of the town uses this facility directly, and all of the town uses it at least directly and indirectly, at least with respect to anybody who has, paid pickup for their solid waste. But most people in town obviously go to the transfer station, take so much pride in it, and I think this will be extremely well received by the town. But I guess along the lines of what Amy was suggesting, to the extent that because of the technology that would be upgraded massively, as you've so eloquently described, could we get, maybe in the running for some sort of like LEED certification, environmental design of the structures, or perhaps have solar panels, an array put on one of the buildings, at least the larger one, or something along those lines that will kind of reflect that this is really reaching for the latest technology that helps the environment.
The buildings that we're looking at pre-manufactured buildings for the staff trailer and likely the scale house, both very small buildings. The tipping building kind of has the most real estate roof-wise. It's something to look into, definitely. But in terms of buildings, we're not doing too much square footage-wise, but definitely something we'll push for to have it as green as possible.
Yeah, and then that may help us get in a position to be more grant worthy, for lack of a better way of putting it. It would assist in a couple different ways. But yeah, as far as the solar array, I meant the larger building. Thank you.
Yep.
Mark, did you need us to move forward with authorization here for the engineering for a town meeting?
That would be ideal. Mr. Chairman, is some type of vote authorizing us to draft or have bond council draft an article for a borrowing authorization for the transfer station.
Oh, I'm sorry, Susan, I just noticed that your hand was up there. It kind of like fades into the yellow background, so I didn't see it there, so I apologize.
Well, I was going to ask if Mark or anyone could give us an idea of the cost of just the engineering and design work.
Excuse me. We met with Weston and Sampson this afternoon, and they have promised us that they'll give us a proposal sometime next week, Susan.
Okay.
I'm estimating it's probably more than 100, but less than 200 somewhere. Okay. And I know that's a broad range, but I think we're somewhere in that 150 probably, more likely.
Okay. And they need to do a little more calculations. I get it.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and make a motion that we authorize you to work with bond counsel to draft a motion for town meeting seeking a borrowing authorization for the final design and engineering costs for the transfer station project.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And yes for me, motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, Lee, Jamie, Jim, Roger, Mark, everybody on this one. We really appreciate it. I know that we've been kind of plodding along and trying to get this project going. So we appreciate everyone's jumping in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move.
Thank you, everybody.
Next agenda item, which is the water and sewer update. So I think that maybe Matt is here.
We need Matt Abrahams. Here he is. Yeah.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
Mr. Chairman, I'm good. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Chairman and other members of the Select Board, my name is Matt Abrahams from the Abrahams Group, and I'm pleased to be back with you this evening to update you on the results of our analysis on the state of the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund and to present options for water and sewer rate changes. I have created some brief slides for you this evening that highlight some key points in our report, which you received as part of your packet for this evening. Before getting into the slides, I'd like to thank town staff Jay Gill, Leanne McGann, and Jimmy Gibbons from DPW, Mark Toogood from the town manager's office, Meg White and Beth Rudolph from the engineering department, and Stacy Ward, the comptroller, for their collaboration on the study and help with refining the capital plan, gathering data, and focusing on suitable financial objectives. I'd also like to thank the chair of the select board, Michael, and vice chair of the select board, Susan, who helped us target sensible rate plan options for the board's consideration. And I'm going to bring my slides up now. Can you see these okay?
Yes.
Okay. So the first slide, we're looking at FY21 in review. FY21 is the current fiscal year, as you're aware. In preparation for FY21, the town increased water and sewer rates by 12.0%. Increased the per bill service charge from $5 to $30. These were significant changes to the billing structure, but changes that projections showed were necessary to make the enterprise fund whole again. Also from last year's rate study, projections showed the need to increase rates by 7% annually from FY22 to FY25 to target a retained earnings balance of 10% of the budget. 10% of the budget has been the town's target, supported by the select board for years. For FY21 projections, related to FY21 projections, a drought and a pandemic have had major impact on the FY21 billings and revenue. Water consumption in 2020, which is calendar year 2020, not fiscal year 2020, was the second highest in the past decade. And billings were up over 40% over last year's billings, or FY20's billings. And the projected surplus for FY21 is over $1.1 million. This retained earnings balance, the retained earnings balance is projected to be over or about $1.6 million, which is about 14% of the budget. That's not shown here. While this retained earnings balance is healthy, it is important to look at projections for the next few years as well, as we always do in our analyses. So looking forward, the next few fiscal years, we always do a 5-year look when we work with the town on these studies. This is from FY22 to FY26. So a big part of the operating of the budget is the MWRA assessment, both on the water and sewer side. So increased consumption in 2020, again, calendar year 2020, directly impacts the water assessment for FY22 and the sewer assessment for FY22 through 2024. The preliminary water assessment for FY22, which has been received by MWRA from MWRA as of a few weeks ago, is up $265,000 or 14.5% over last year's assessment, for the current fiscal year's assessment. The preliminary FY22 sewer assessment is up $130,000 or 3% over FY21's. The water assessment is up in large part because of the increased usage in town during the warmer months of 2020, as we just discussed. It is also up because the town's share of MWRA water usage is up because Boston's share is down. Usage patterns in Boston have changed significantly over the past year, and that has had an impact on other MWRA communities' share of usage. Also, based on the review of the 3 years of usage that impacts the sewer assessment, we think the sewer assessment increase will be larger next year. Something to keep in mind there. The capital plan, which is a big part of what we review and work into our study, is presented as follows. There is one truck purchase of $65,000 included, and there is $24 million in total projects on the 10-year plan that we work on for the study that covers water, sewer, and stormwater projects. And if we're looking at just the 5-year look, that turns into a projected additional debt of $4 million over the 5 fiscal years in our focus, FY22 through FY26. So projections, looking at the bottom line, we're projecting annual deficits between 425,000 to 1.2 million over the 5-year period. These projected deficits do not include any rate action, and they are also provided in your report. But they do show a continued need to address rates. So rate plan options, third and final slide. Town's objective to target is to target a retained earnings balance between 8 and 10%. This is our renewed focus, down a little bit from the 10%, but we want to make sure that we're between that range of 8% and 10%. Each of the options that are presented here target that range of 8% and 10% by the end of FY26, the 5th year in our look. So each option is presented here in the tables that you see. You see the rate plan option, and we've included the impact on the average residential user's bill. This is a per bill impact, not a yearly impact. So option 1, we've shown a level increase in each of the 5 years of 4%. And you can see the impact in year 1 on the average residential user's bill, about $4 per bill. Option 2, no increase in FY22, the fiscal year that we're focused on this evening for talking about rates, but with no rate change in the upcoming fiscal year. That means that we're projecting a need for higher rates in the outlying years, 6% per year. Option 3, a little bit of a lower increase in year 1 and 2 compared to option 1, but that means a little bit of a higher increase in the outlying years. And 3% in year 1 projects to be about $3 for the average residential user's bill. And Mr. Chairman, that was all I plan on showing you this evening with my slides, but I'm happy to take any comments or any questions.
Thanks, Matt. We appreciate and responding to our request to have the multiple options and having that range between 8 and 10%. I don't know if Jay or anybody has any comments on the DPW side. I see Leanne is there as well.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Matt for his hard work and all staff of producing these options. I think the good thing is we had a warm summer. It gave us a lot of revenue, which will help the budgets in the next couple of years. As you pointed out, Matt, last year we had to do a 12% increase, and then the outer years was 7% all the way across the board. Now with the revenues that we made up the summer, we could reduce the percentages. I have to tell you, for staff, it's with the past couple of years the rates have been high, and we've had a lot of residents calling us with the different rate changes and the flat fee. I think this year at least it will be a little easier to handle the calls, because I think we're reducing the percentage. So I have nothing else. Leanne, would you like to say anything?
Not this time. No. It's obviously there are 3 options there, and whatever the board thinks makes the most sense.
Yeah, Jimmy.
No,
Jimmy,
I agree with Leanne.
Yeah. So hopefully you can pick an option tonight. What we like to do is put it in the next billing cycle. If we do raise the rates, we give them an insert into the water bill. Advance notice. Yep. So if we can vote on an option tonight, if it's reasonable, would be great, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thanks, Jay. Questions from members of the board?
I just have a quick question about the presentation, and thank you so much, everyone, for all your hard work and all the efforts. And the slide presentation is super helpful. This is very minor. It's not a dispositive kind of question, but the reference to the average residential user's bill. So this is annually, not quarter. This is an annual amount is 100.
Sorry about that. It's quarterly, actually, the average bill per quarter.
Okay, I think that's really important for the board to know. And in the future, I think any kind of presentation should always indicate if it's quarterly or annual, just so we'll be as informed as possible. Thank you so much for that clarification. Thanks again.
Mariano?
Yeah, so I'd like to see if, I don't know if you have the spreadsheet in front of you, but on this specific slide, a couple more rows. So one would be, what the deficit or not deficit in on each year is, and then what the percentage of return earnings balance is. So if our target is 8 to 10%, I'd like to see a row. Most importantly, that row is, does this get us to between 8 and 10% by FY26? Are we at 3% now, right? So it'd be interesting because this is going to have to be approved by town meeting anyway, whatever we decide here. So I think town meeting will want to know, okay, we just raised it to catch up for the previous years where we haven't, but what does this get us? Where does it get us? Because I think town meeting is very open to us with our policy on just general revenue, that we have a policy of how much we want to have. So I think that having a policy for water, sewer, stormwater town meeting will also be very open to it, but I think we need to show where we are.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you would like, I can put those graphs on the screen if that would help.
Please, yeah, and I think that part of our conversation, Mariano, and Jay can also elucidate this a little further, is that we've kind of always talked about this 10% number, but really the kind of having that range of 8 to 10, seems a little bit more plausible and allows us to be a little bit more flexible, through that kind of 5-year projection. So.
Right, I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, so these are actually attached to the end of our report. So you may have this in your possession as well. This is page 4 of the report, which is our baseline scenario, which is the no rate change scenario. It's kind of a little bit hard to see, but that orange bar is actually the range of 8 to 10% because the blue line dips down so low. It's not a very wide range as presented here in this slide. But you can see the baseline scenario. All of these tables and graphs I'm about to show you are presenting the same data. So here, the top row is your surplus and deficit surplus or deficit per year. The projected retained earnings balance is the second row, and the percentage as it relates to the budget is the third row. All right, so again, the baseline no rate change scenario. Here's option 1 scenario, and you can see the orange line is bigger now because it's not as wide of a range on the y-axis of this graph. But you can see the projected surplus and deficit in the top row, and FY22 through 25, even with the rate plan presented of 4% per year, is still projected to have deficits in those years, with a surplus out in FY26 being the first year. But you can see that the retained earnings projections do trend downward until it does get between that target range consistently in the outlying years. That's option 1. Here's option 2. And here's option 3.
And the projected, we're going from a 1.1 million, almost 1.2 million surplus to a negative, to a deficit. Is that, was that huge of a difference that last summer was dry and we got that much revenue, or is there something else from FY21 to 22?
My take on it is that it is mostly, if not all, because of the usage patterns, because of the weather and because of the pandemic, with people being home more.
Yeah, that's correct. Mostly consumption, correct? Yeah.
And the increase, the 12%.
And the increase.
Yeah, but the 12% increase carries over to FY22, right? So this is on top of that.
Right.
So we're projecting, I guess it depends if the summer, if this upcoming summer is again very, very dry, then we wouldn't need the FY23 increase as much, right?
Right, that's correct.
That's correct.
I think the issue too is that we discussed is that having a more kind of stable and steady increase rather than kind of crossing our fingers and and then having higher increases. I think that's what residents don't really like, is that big bump all of a sudden. So
Right.
Trying to figure out a way to keep it level and adding a smaller increase, even though we've got the benefit of some good revenue from the previous year.
Excuse me, Matt, can you just clarify something? For instance, if you look in the second row, projected retained earnings, or I should say the first row, even though it says a surplus deficit, the deficit in 22 of 252 is just in the budget. We still have 1.3 in retained earnings, correct?
Yes.
So that doesn't mean, I just want to clarify that to the board.
The surplus and deficit is what you get when you compare projected revenues to projected expenditures. And the retained earnings balance is a separate calculation, yes.
Right, so still, if you look through 26, we still have a balance in retained earnings of well over $1 million. I just wanted to point that out.
And also, Mr. Chairman, this will be our 4th year that we have our stormwater fee into the water and sewer budget. It's in our budget, so this is part of the process also, so we're good to go for the 4th year.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks, Jay.
So I'm okay with any of the 3 options. The one thing I would say is maybe we should say our target is 8 to 15% instead of 8 to 10%. I think that given how variable it is because of the summer months, 8 to 10 is just too narrow of a range, right? And if I look at this and I say, hey, right now we're at 13.7, so we're above 10. So why are we racing, right? So I think saying, hey, we need to have a wider upper and lower limits because it is so variable on the summer. So, and then we can say we're trying to keep it somewhere in between those two.
Yeah, I think if it's more than 10, we don't raise the rates, right? It goes back into the retained earnings. And that back in the, for 9 years, way back, probably 10 years ago, we didn't raise the water rates for 9 years, and because we had a healthy retained earnings. What has changed is projects and infrastructure and stormwater, which is a little bit part of it. But I think we've never really retained the 10%. I think, doing what we're doing here between the 8 and 10, I think is a good range. I wouldn't go over 10%. I don't think we have any. Let's see if we can do 10% for the next 5 years. It'd be awesome. We could, but it gets very difficult. That's my take on it.
It allows us to have those more kind of stable increases, over the budget years.
So can I just ask, am I understanding correctly that the biggest cost driver for our costs year to year, looking ahead to the next year, is the MWRA assessments?
Yes, that's correct.
And we were also, when we were discussing this, understanding and wrestling with what you mentioned, which is that this past year, 2020, was kind of an outlier. It was a pandemic, more people were home. I think over the summer, 3 of the houses on my street suddenly had swimming pools, not big ones, but they had swimming pools for their kids to play in because everyone was stuck inside and home. And so also, people were, it was the economic fallout of the pandemic is still impacting people. So we didn't want to sort of do anything dramatic and be cognizant of the fact that we had just gotten through a kind of odd year. And so we were trying to find something that would keep the increase lower, on the lower side next year, if possible, but still, move ahead with trying to build up the right level of retained earnings. And that's how we came up with the 3%, and stepping up to 5% in the out years.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, just make a comment related to the comments just made. So the MWR assessment for FY22 as as MWA shared with the preliminary assessments, total water and sewer, $6.7 million or just under there. And the budget is about 12.5 million. So it's over 50% of the budget.
Yeah.
So we got to kind of land on one of these here, I think, to move forward. I'm personally a little partial to option 3, but if anybody else has any.
Yeah, I am too. That's what I was getting at.
Yep, me as well.
I just did a quick little math and just looked at the percentage of retained earnings compared to budget, and it looks like option 1 puts us in the best shape in terms of the retained earnings over the 5 years. It's like 10.25% versus option 3, which is 8.5 roughly. So I think if we're looking at 8 to 15, then option 1 makes more sense. But if we're still looking at 8 to 10, I think that's a good. I like the slower increase over time and the flexibility to be able to pull back if we feel like we're able to. I just wanted to throw that out.
Seems that the option 3 kind of meets our policy objective, especially in the short term, kind of coming off of a bigger increase and having the benefit of some more retained earnings at the front end of our study. Is there a comfort level with 3? We can take a motion to approve that.
So I'll move that we approve option 3 on the water and sewer rate increase as presented.
Second.
All in favor? I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
And yes for me. Motion carries unanimously 5-0. Any other questions or comments from members of the board or staff?
No, I just want to thank all of you. I think this is a good plan, good option. I actually picked this option, Mike, just to let you know. I didn't want to tell you.
Oh, this was yours. Well, it'd be helpful to kind of move us along here. Geez, but thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Matt.
You, Matt.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks. We'll see you soon. And I think we'll jump. I think the Stacey Ward is here as well, and then we'll the comptroller. Then we'll jump right into the FinCom's OPEB presentation after that. Hey,
Evening,
Stacey,
everyone.
how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I don't know if we're here for the contract or the comptroller report, but I wasn't really going to talk much about the comptroller report because I know you have a busy meeting tonight.
Okay. So we can, if there's any questions about the report, certainly you can answer them, or any questions about the contract. I think we do need to kind of move forward on that. Is that right?
Yeah, it would make sense to move forward before the board changes because the terms of the contract is through March 31st. So the new contract would start April 1st.
Okay. Makes sense. Any questions? I know this was, I think we discussed this at our last meeting as well, and kind of circulated the contract. Were there any questions or comments?
I would only say that it's been a phenomenally busy year, and you and your department have really risen to the occasion, and my hat's off. I don't know how you, I really don't know how you do it, and you need more staff, more support, but you do a super bang up job, and I read over the contract. It seems perfectly reasonable.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really just piecing together the contract that I started with, and then we were just doing like annual updates. So it just made sense to pull it all together and sort of match up some of the personnel policy guide sections that really weren't in the contract. So it's more cleanup than anything, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. It all makes sense to me. And I agree with Susan on how much your department has worked in the past year. I mean, it's been crazy. Every department, I think.
Yeah, we've all been very busy, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 2 jobs. Rolled into one.
There is.
So I'll go ahead and move that we reappoint Stacy Ward as comptroller according to the contract as presented, and to go ahead and authorize that contract.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano,
Yes.
Jackie,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
and yes for me. Motion carries unanimously 5-0. Were there any other questions for Stacy while we've got her here?
Yeah, just one question on on the comptroller's report.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. The building permits, is
Yes.
that like a timing thing, or is it a real decline that we're seeing?
I think the building permits actually looks okay, because when we're comparing January, it was pre-COVID last year, and this January is COVID. So the difference of maybe 40 grand isn't like a deal breaker, I don't think, for the revenues. It could very well also be a timing difference with February receipts, but I'll know more. Actually, we're slightly behind on posting our cash receipts for February, so I'll know a little bit more where we end off this month. Just
Okay.
to see like a little bit of the COVID, although February last year was pre-COVID as well. So we might be closer to March where we'd get some more realistic numbers.
Yeah.
But it seems better than I thought it would be, although people were probably home a lot looking at all the projects they could do in their house and did some building, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one that worried me. I figured the excise would be lower because there's nowhere to drive. So why would you buy a
Yeah.
new car, right? But
Yeah, that's gonna have to be looked at for our FY22 budget. I think FinCom will end up having to reduce that revenue because we're not gonna finish near the 3.6, I don't think, this year with the first commitment that came out. It's a little bit lower than last year, a couple $100,000. So we're gonna probably have to drop that line item on the local receipt line.
okay.
Figure out another way to get the money.
Okay, thank you.
Right, I'm still hanging around. I'm gonna listen to OPEB, so I'll be, if you wanna drop me from the panelists, I'll still be listening, but if you have questions, I'll be around.
Great. Thanks, Stacy. We
Thanks, Stacy.
appreciate it and appreciate everything you do.
Thank you, Jackie, for your service. I didn't get a chance to see you in a
Thank you.
while.
I know, thank you. Thank you for your service.
So thanks, Stacey. And again, I just wanted to also see if there's any matters from the audience that otherwise were not on our agenda. Anybody had a comment, question, anything? Raise your hand and we will call on you if you do. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the FinCom OPEB presentation. Enzo Racionato, the chair of the Finance Committee. Thank you, Enzo, for coming in and being very patient, and for how much work that FinCom has done on this. Really, really appreciate it.
Great, thanks, Mike. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, great. So, you know, I'll be honest, just to start this off, just to say that I had no idea what OPEB was when I first started with FinCom 3 years ago, and some days I still wish that were true. So OPEB represents one of the biggest concerns from a financial perspective that the town has, but it's so complex that it really doesn't get a lot of press during town meeting, which is why we want to do a little bit more of a detailed look here and present it to Select Board. So OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. It consists of the non-pension benefits that the town offers to our retirees. And the biggest and most significant of those costs is subsidizing healthcare. OPEB liability is basically the present value of all those future year costs. So as of last year, it represented $125 million. So, you know, what's in that number? It covers 1,400 participants, which include the 590 retirees and their spouses, plus all the future obligations around the 829 active employees. So our current funding is as a pay-as-you-go plan. So every year, the town budget covers an average of 72% of the health insurance costs of the 590 retirees and spouses. So of that health insurance budget, $2.7 million last year was to cover this OPEB pay-as-you-go cost. On top of that, we contribute $325,000 to the OPEB trust. But as you can see by the chart on the right, that's not enough to keep the OPEB liability from growing. it's going to climb to almost $350 million by 2050. And the fact that it's growing shows how under contributing how under contributed the costs we are doing to the future costs, and obviously significantly. So the current town subsidy for health insurance to the retirees varies depending on what health plan the retirees select, but overall it covers, as I said, 72% of the total healthcare cost. So that's OPEB. The other side of the pension equation is contributory retirement. So this is the pension fund for the town employees. So teacher pensions are covered by the state, but for the town employees, we have this contributory retirement pension. It covers right now, or at least as of last year, 274 current retirees and their surviving spouses. Plus, the pension liability covers all the future obligations for current employees as they retire. So the unfunded liability for this portion of the pension was $30 million, which is much better than on OPEB because we've been focused on funding it longer. So 80% of the total liability is already funded. So that 30 million represents the 20% that's still unfunded. So as you can see by the chart on the right, the orange line shows how that $30 million is reducing each year to be fully funded and paid by 2030. So that's the good news. The bad news is it requires us to continue to increase this contributory retirement funding account by 7.75% each year until it's paid off. So by 2029, that payment's going to go from $6 million in FY22 to $10.1 million by 2029. So if you put those two pieces together, you get the full pension picture, right? You've got pension and then OPEB on top of that. The pension costs, as we said, are going to grow 8% a year till 2029, and then after that, it'll drop off and it'll only be, it'll grow at 4%. OPEB will grow as healthcare costs grow, and those have obviously been growing very quickly recently, and averaging 4.5% annually. So if you put those two pieces together and you combine it with the fact that town revenues are only growing at 2.5 or 3%, the pension is going to be paid off, but OPEB is going to continue to grow because it's underfunded. So as I said earlier, we're looking to fully fund the $30 million pension liability by 2030. And we'll do that by growing that payment 8% each year compounding. So this chart shows why that's going to be challenging, right? The payment in 2020 was 5.2 million. And if that grew like town revenues grow at 3%, it would stay, the same ratio of the town budget. So by 2030, it would be 6.7 million, right? But it's not going to grow that fast. It's going to grow faster. It's going to grow by 7.75%. So each year, it's going to eat up a larger and larger share of the total budget. So in FY22, just to give you an example, the budget was $450,000 more than last year. And that's $450,000 that we have to make up somewhere else, right? Whether it's either increased revenues or taking away from other town budgets. So that orange part of the graph shows you what that additional funding will be because of that faster growth rate. And it's over that full period, it's $15 million over that next decade that are going to go above and beyond what we're paying today. So I wanted to look at the current funding assumption. So assuming that we keep to that schedule in the last slide and we keep OPEB funding constant, the pension will be a big portion of our future budget. And this chart shows that current funding plan, rising each year until 2029. And then in 2030, it drops off because the pension will be fully funded. And then we just have to cover the new costs and then continuing to go with OPEB. But of course, this assumption will pay off the pension, but now you still have OPEB, the OPEB component to pay off. So how do you cover the OPEB piece? So there's obviously lots of different options, but this first option would be the one that I think that we've talked about the most in past years. It would be to shift the pension funding to OPEB after 2030. So we figure out how to fund that 8% pension growth over the next decade, and once that's paid off, instead of turning it off, we shift that higher funding to OPEB, and then keep growing that funding at the same level of town revenue growth. And that gets you, if you do those three things and you combine it, you can see that the OPEB number that liability will quickly reduce, and then, hopefully be paid off by 2050. Obviously, there's a lot of assumptions that go into that number. There's what happens with healthcare costs, how many new employees do you have, how many would stay long enough to vest, et cetera, right? There's lots of assumptions that go into that graph. But ultimately, if you stuck to that plan, you could get there. The other option would be to combine this increase in funding and with changes to the OPEB benefits. So to do this, we need to do a lot more analysis, right? We need to bring actuaries in, help us to do the exact calculations, scenarios, and determine some options. Last year, FinCom went into this in pretty deep detail, and we did a lot of research, and we actually met with the town of Andover's finance committee because they had done a ton of work on their OPEB problem back in 2016, and we wanted to pick their brains. They work closely with their actuaries, their select board, and their unions to find some other alternatives. And they did lots of different things, but they made it part of the conversation for all their future union contracts, because the risk here from the union's perspective is that the problem is ignored, and then in the future, the town budgets wouldn't be able to support the benefits, and then they'll have to severely cut those benefits for future retirees, which nobody wants, right? So they, working with all those different stakeholders, they implemented several different changes. I think they had like a 14-point plan. And with that holistic plan, they got their $650 million liability to be fully funded by 2038, which I thought was very, very impressive. So to wrap up, we did extensive research here, trying to understand what is a very complex topic. And I am definitely not an OPEB expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I think this helps us lay out at least the core of the issues associated with the problem. And, I think FinComs from the past have highlighted this, the present, and certainly from the future, seen this as a major real concern for the town. And we think that we should do a little bit more research to better understand some of these potential solutions. So I'm happy to take questions about any part of this.
Thanks, Enzo. Appreciate it. Questions from the board?
Yeah, and so thank you very much for all the work. I know, we've been, FinCom's been talking about OPEB forever, right? So I think we're, in a little bit better situation today than we were, 4 or 5 years ago when the OPEB line was zero at every town meeting, and FinCom had to, scratch and claw to get $150,000 or $200,000 in there, and now it's already in the budget to begin with. So I think the visibility is there now. Can you go back to option one,
Sure.
the slide before this one? So this is essentially our current plan, right? Is this what you're showing?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if we don't have a current policy, but I think this is the one that's been discussed most often as the potential solution.
Yeah, I think, so I know last year we were looking at just formalizing a select board policy that when the pension liability is fully funded, that will go into OPEB. And we've always been working under that assumption that that's what we were going to do. But again, we don't know in 2029 who's going to be sitting on, on this board, right? So I think it would be good to, to have FinCom formally recommend to the select board that we adopt this policy of option one. That way it's, it's written as a policy. I don't know what you think, if FinCom would be willing to make that recommendation or.
Yeah, I think we can discuss it. I think that would certainly, at least, a written policy would certainly be better than no policy. I think I still have reservations over can we actually meet this rising contributor retirement? I think that this is really, a really big impact. It really makes the budget over the course, and we're going to start to see it over the next 2 to 3 years, that there's just this giant chunk of $600, $500, $600,000, $700,000 that we have to keep making up for each and every subsequent year. It's really going to be tough to get there. I think obviously if you can get there, you can figure out how to fund this orange part, then I think that would be a very viable strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe option 1A would be, worst case, not worst, but worst case would be what if we could only grow contributory at 5%? How far would it push out the pension liability?
If we could only grow, I'm sorry, what?
5%. Like, does it push it out to 2030, 2031, right, versus 2029? I don't want to push it, but again, I'm concerned about the orange line as well. Increasing this 7.75% every year is, especially as we get further down the line, is going to be painful.
Yep. No, that's exactly our concern as well. So I'm not sure what those options are in terms of working with the actuary on the contributor retirement. And obviously, if you push that out, then that's also going to lengthen that other part. The second half of the curve is how quickly you're going to be paying down OPEB, right? Because now you're not paying down OPEB until 2033 and 2035, and that pushes out, that makes that liability continue to grow for even longer.
Yeah. Do you know any other towns that have addressed their future OPEB liability? Because we are paying for OPEB, like we pay as we go, right? I mean, we're paying for all the pensions, we're paying for all the retiree benefits, right? This is just the future, the future benefits from current employees, right?
Right. Exactly. We're paying for all the current ones, right? But I think the idea is that number gets bigger and bigger and over time, right? Like,
yeah,
it advances. You're going to have a lot more retirees in 10 years relative to what we have today. So it makes it that much harder to keep up the pay as you go.
Do you know what other towns are doing? Has anybody, like, I don't know, have they done an override to address this? Like, what is anybody else doing?
We spent a lot of time with the town of Andover, and they were really generous with sharing a lot of details of their process. And it's funny because we had spent time digging into this. It was February of 2020, so we were just getting ready to come to select board, and then COVID hit, and we forgot all about it. So I think if that would be kind of the next steps, is to really understand what some of those other options are, and maybe spend more time with other finance committees, and see if there were other examples that we can take from. But the town of Andover one was excellent.
Okay. So I mean,
Wellesley Mariano did. Yeah.
I'm seeing Stacy's comment that a written policy would be good. So I mean, I'd like to get that, like, FinCom to vote on it if FinCom thinks it's a good policy. I mean, I know it's this board's responsibility to vote, but I would like to see the advice of FinCom on that as well.
Fair enough. We can do that. We can do that probably, in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I was just going to say, sorry to interrupt you guys, but but I think Wellesley did have an override to kind of fund their pension liability, and but really that's an outlier. I think a lot of communities have been kind of in the middle, but really kind of doing what we were doing in prior years of just kind of crossing their fingers and hoping it would be taken care of at some future date, which is kind of created the deficit that we see here. So I would definitely look forward to policy. I mean, as Mariano was saying, we don't know who's going to be sitting here in 10 years, but it's helpful to have that that continuity and that kind of guardrail in place.
Yep, fair enough. And I think actually we'll have the updated, I think this year we're getting the updated OPEB and contributor retirement, the actuarial reports for both, I think are coming out. So I think we probably get an update as to where they stand as well. A lot of the numbers we have here, I think, are from 2019, because that was they go on an every other year cycle, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Stacy's saying on the chat that yes, they are both being updated. Will be around June.
Okay, perfect.
Any other questions or comments?
I was just going to say, thank you, Enzo, and to the rest of the Finance Committee for, putting in the time and spending time with Andover and coming up with these suggestions, these ideas, and kind of, trying to adapt them for what might work for Winchester. That's, this is important, like you say, we don't want in out years to have this take up so much of the town budget that we're looking at actually cutting benefits. So very important work.
Yeah, thank you, Enzo. And I know this has been kind of the, as Mariano was saying, the third rail of municipal government. So to kind of take it head on like this, it's just what needed to happen. And so I think everybody's been kind of avoiding it for a long time. So we really appreciate the leadership there. And it's nice having you here. Feel free to come to any of our meetings Monday nights that you have free. I know we certainly appreciate it.
No, probably not many in the coming weeks. So thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah. So moving on to our next agenda item here, we'll just go down the list here. We have a WinCam live streaming resolution to approve. I don't know if anyone had any questions or comments.
I was just going to say that this is the resolution that the folks at WinCam asked us to vote to support a bill that would allow towns to place an assessment on digital streaming services for using public infrastructure. Cable companies have to pay for this for using the public right of way to provide their services, and this would then require streaming companies to do the same thing and would help support WinCam.
Right, it's basically keeping up with technology.
Right.
Yeah, I appreciate all the work that WinCam has done in the advocacy side for this legislation. Also, Senator Lewis has been pretty engaged on this as well. So appreciate our delegation, Representative Day as well. Were there any questions, or did we want to approve our the resolution in support of the legislation?
So I move that we vote this resolution in support of legislation for an assessment on live streaming services.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano?
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And yes for me, motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next item on our agenda, the appointment of town council. Were there any questions here? This is relative formality for us with Anderson Krieger, and by our charter, we appoint town council on a yearly basis. So I think we've been well served by Anderson Krieger, and makes sense for us to continue. And especially this year, I think we've been really getting our value out of them, probably a little bit more than they would have liked, but it's been a very busy year, independent of the pandemic, with a lot of projects moving forward, and so they've served us well. Any questions or comments on the appointment of town council?
I completely agree with the chairman's comments, and I think they were well stated in favor of renewing the contract. Thank you.
I don't know if Lisa would have anything to add. When we were talking with Anderson, with not Austin Anderson, with Art and Mina about this, we haven't quite figured out how to, what the next fee arrangement is going to be. But the language in the charter does require the board to approve appoint a town council every year, and so it's coming up on our year, and it's actually an individual. So they requested that we appoint both Mina and Art.
Yes, to elaborate on that, the town council appointment is from April 1st through the end of March. So April 1st is unfortunately in between this and the next meeting. There has been some issues in other communities with having even that 5-day lapse in not having an appointed town council for various cases that might apply or it might be an issue. So it is recommended that we do appoint someone. In the past, we have appointed Anderson and Krieger on a shorter than a yearly basis to allow ourselves some time to review where we want to go moving forward. Since I've been here, Anderson and Krieger has charged us a fixed fee of $22,000 a month, with any litigation or special projects being an hourly basis after that, or above and beyond that. They recently sent us a new fee proposal in writing. We discussed this in a conversation last week. They are going to be increasing their hourly rates for all of their municipalities on July 1st. So they did send us those new rates. They also have discussed the option of either us paying a increased monthly fixed fee, or using them on an hourly basis. So we're doing that analysis right now. So we don't have that information to all of you, except that the cost is looking like it's going to go up. But we've also discussed how, sometimes we include Anderson and Krieger on projects at a very early phase, and we don't necessarily need to do that. So certainly, if we sort of have a policy to bring projects to them at a later phase for them to review, that would keep the costs sort of within our budget. But it is an issue that we have to figure out what that cost impact would be on an hourly basis, or whether we would want to look at a fixed annual contract. The fixed annual contract that they've offered is $375,000 a year. So just doing the quick math, that's about $100,000 increase from the $22,000 a month. I don't know in particular, and this is something I'm still trying to figure out, if that 375 does include some other things that 22,000 doesn't. So because we usually spend more than 22,000 because we do have special projects. So if it does include some of those extras, it could actually be a good deal. If it doesn't, then that's certainly a major increase just on the flat fee.
And so that will be determined at another meeting or with further consideration. Like, that's not actually part of the motion tonight, which
That's right, yeah.
Okay, structure.
So one recommendation is to appoint them on a temporary basis for a month or two, April, May, June, perhaps, through town meeting. We've done that before. And that allows us the time to look at what the July 1st impact would be.
So I'll go ahead and move to appoint Nina Macarius and Arthur Krieger of Anderson and Krieger Town Council for the period starting April 1st through the end of June 2021.
Second.
All in favor? I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano?
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Amy? Amy, I didn't quite get you there.
Yes.
And yes, for me, motion carries unanimously 5-0. And so we'll have kind of updates. As Lisa said, that they're kind of going through this with all the communities that they represent, which are similar to us in kind of size and demand. So it was, I know that we've been trying to kind of rein in some of our legal costs here. So it was good that that we got Enzo off before we started talking about it. So, we'll keep moving here. Outdoor dining is the next agenda item. We have some applications that are in that need to be approved. Is that right, Lisa?
That's right. We have 6 applications for your consideration tonight. There's a spreadsheet in your packet that outlines the restaurants, but it's 4 spaces recommended for A Tavola, Black Horse, China Sky, First House Pub, and Lucia's, and 2 spots for the Spot That's about 20, that's 22 spaces total. I did want to let the select board know that there was a letter, a recommendation letter from the chamber on a number of initiatives they'd like to see in conjunction with not only the loss of spaces for outdoor dining, but also the impact of losing spaces for a number of other initiatives. We had sort of sent a brief partial response that there were some of those things that we would be considering shorter term, and there were some that we would be looking at as part of a larger parking study. Some of the low-hanging fruit that I do recommend in consideration of their request, but also these applications are potential relocation of the 5 15-minute takeout spaces, either relocating them slightly out of town center, so even maybe a block or two away, so that we don't have the 15-minute spots and the outdoor dining spots at the same time. I've asked the DPW to make nicer signs that could be installed on posts that say 15-minute curbside. So they would be they'd be generic ones that can be used for not a specific restaurant, but for curbside on a number of levels. So that's one thing that the board can think about. The second would be 10 spaces along Mount Vernon Street at the lot right across from Town Hall. Those are currently, you have the visitor spots and then some handicap spots, and then next to those you have sort of Town Hall employee parking. The recommendation would be to turn all of the ones that are not the visitor spots or handicap spots along Mount Vernon. I think there's about 10 total to 2-hour parking for downtown businesses. So those are 2 things we could do easily.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. So I have a question. So right now, I mean, every time I drive in the town center, there's always parking spots available. But I know it's, we're in the middle of a pandemic. So, and like it might be like a block away or 2 blocks away but that's always going to be the case. We're never going to have enough parking spots right in front of a store. But as more vaccinated people start taking the commuter rail more, what are we doing as far as commuter permits? Because I think a lot of people are using the 2-hour parking on the Arizona lot to go to the town center, and if that turns into commuter parking again, I think we might have an issue.
Yeah, that's not likely to turn to commuter parking until the MBTA project is done, and even then we'd have time to reevaluate.
Okay.
There is plenty of commuter parking. Since Wedgmere is the only station that's open, there is plenty of commuter parking still there. And we know that will fill up. So we're actually trying to expedite the permitting for the Eversource project by the MBTA on that lot, free up those spaces. And then I've also been continuing conversations with DCR and letting them know that we are still interested in the use of the beach parking for overflow. So we think that we'll have enough commuter parking at Wedgmere. But I think during the outdoor dining season, there's certainly concern about the number of parking spaces downtown in terms of the loss of the 22. So I do think that sort of moving the 15-minute curbside, spaces a little bit further, reconsidering those spots is probably a good move. And if that's the case, then, the board could either let us have the judgment of doing that or saying, yes, let's move them and come back to the next meeting with the recommended spots. So that's, like I said, that's sort of low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, so I'm okay with authorizing the town manager to do that without having to come back to the board. As far as Wedgmere, I've heard anecdotally that we see people coming in from out of town because we charge less per day than parking at other MBTA stations. Do we have to talk to DCR to increase the daily rate, or can we do it ourselves to match what other train stations charge? Because Wedgmere is owned by DCR, right?
Yeah,
Stacy says DCR.
I'm also thinking that the agreement with them has sort of long expired. So that's another item that we're trying to discuss with them. So as we're looking to renew that contract, that could be part of the discussion, because there is revenue sharing as part of it. We've been sending them money back as if we have an agreement in place.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So I think, Lisa, too, for, I mentioned over the next, period of months, there's going to be a lot of changes in this town center with construction and with what's going on with the MBTA, but, our projects as well. If there's a way that we can kind of have recommendations connecting with the chamber and residents to, I think that for some of these changes, we probably at least need to kind of tee them up on our agenda. Have a public hearing and at least scheduled to give people the opportunity to respond for people that live in those neighborhoods and around there and work there and see what we can do. So, I'm not sure what we can do right now, but I think, I know Beth isn't here, so I'm not sure on the engineering side, but what recommendations, I guess the question is, can we move forward right now? Because we've been talking a lot about these things. So which ones can we check off the list or just hand off to you guys that you've been talking about?
Yeah, I think the two I mentioned are definitely the low hanging fruit. And your recommendation for public hearing is a very good one, specifically because there are going to be potentially so many changes considered in so many different neighborhoods, and there is an overall impact as things shift. So we would want the appropriate personnel here to sort of make the presentation about what those potential changes are, have those sort of listed beforehand, get those input, answer those questions, have the staff here, and then that can help inform the select board. So I think we talked about one of the April meetings.
Yeah, I think the next one to schedule it. So it seems like that there's consensus here to kind of give the town manager the authority to make a decision on some of the those parking options that were discussed and schedule a public hearing for the 5th. The other piece of it as well is that we've heard from the property owners at 10 Converse Place through Ian Gillespie that they're willing to entertain us using that lot there for parking in the evenings and weekends, and even that grassy area if we wanted to pave it for town center employees. And I think pulling some of that traffic out off the street and from those parking spaces will give a little bit of a breather. So I mean, anything we can do, frankly. The only other piece that I was a little concerned about was the request about the Lincoln School on Mystic Valley Parkway and those teacher spaces with kids coming back to school. I mean, it seems like that there's probably more spaces than normal there now, but I don't know what on the school side, if the school committee or superintendent have kind of weighed in on that option.
I did forward that request to the superintendent's office and also the principal of that school. We haven't had robust conversations, but initially it was something that they were concerned about because they do use those spaces. So I don't have a recommendation for you from the town, but I think it would be certainly difficult for the schools. That being said, I think one of the further updates in conversations with the chamber is not necessarily eliminating those teacher spaces, but shifting them a block. And I haven't fully explored that option, but that is, I think, a potential. But again, that's a lot. There's a lot of, shifting and moving around. So I think we need the numbers of exactly how many spaces, what they would be classified as, and have that mapped out for everyone.
Yeah, because it's always that bubble that moves around and just goes to another neighborhood and pushes somebody out of somewhere that comes back, so just trying to get a hold of it over the next several months. Probably we just need to continue to work with the chamber, who's been really engaged on this, to make sure that we had the maximum parking available. You know, it really kind of ebbs and flows in the town center. So sometimes you may come and see that there's a lot available, but you know, other times, you know, it's completely packed, and certainly sensitive to the idea that with the Laraway lot and the Waterfield lot, we really kind of take away a lot of parking options for residents. So anything that we can do would be great. So on those kind of smaller options, I think we're good to go. And then April 5th, we'll have the public hearing on some of the other stuff and see where we are.
Okay, so we definitely need an approval from you first on the outdoor dining spaces as listed in the packet. So the 22 spaces total, and then you know, I certainly would welcome a vote in terms of allowing the town manager to work with staff to move the 15-minute curbside spaces, and then also changing 10 spaces along Mount Vernon Street and the town hall lot or Jenks lot to 2-hour spaces for town center.
Sounds good.
So I move that we approve the outdoor dining applications for Tavola, Black Horse Tavern, China Sky, First House Pub, Ristorante Lucia, and The Spot.
Second.
As presented.
Hold on,
Is that
and
the
Swan
correct
Street
way?
Diner? The Swan Street Diner need one, or?
No, they're actually going to be using the sidewalk space, so they're not using any parking spaces.
Oh, okay. Sorry, they were on my list.
But don't they still need to be approved as outdoor dining?
They do. So I guess
Yeah,
Okay.
to use the sidewalk, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so after Ristorante Lucia, Swanton Street Diner, and The Spot as presented.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano?
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
And yes for me. Motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next item on the agenda. Sorry, Amy, do you have something?
I was going to say.
Are we going to do the motion to allow Lisa to change those spots?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought
Yeah.
that we did that. Go ahead.
I tried to get it all down. I move that we authorize the town manager to work with town staff to adjust curbside takeout, town hall lot, and Mystic Valley Parkway spaces to increase consumer parking for downtown, for the downtown, and to hold a public hearing on April 5th.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano?
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Amy? And yes for me. Motion carries unanimously 5-0.
Can I just ask a quick question? So all this is arguably temporary during the MBTA construction. Is that fair to assume, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be somewhat rolling, you know, because we're, you know, as you know, from the MBTA construction and some of the projects that we have going on, the timing keeps shifting, you know, so we're just trying to provide as much as we can based on what's there. And even, you know, going into the summer, you know, some of those spaces, you know, the schools will open up as well, and we can kind of, you know, shift things up, you know, a little bit. So it's just going to be kind of rolling changes, and really the chamber is our eyes and ears on that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So I think we're good there. Next, Town Day and the Winchester High School prom.
I'm just scrolling down to the map. So, so Town Day received approval for June 5th with a rain date of June 6th. High school graduation is looking at Sunday, June 6th with a rain date of June 5th. So there's a possibility that both of those will happen on the same date. That's if it rains on one of those dates and somebody moves their event to the following day. The overlap is going to be primarily on a portion of Main Street, and it will overlap for approximately 20 minutes at the most as I think about 180 students march from the high school to Manchester Field So I met on site with various town departments and also folks from Town Day and the high school. And everybody believes that not only will it be completely fine if both events overlap, but they'd actually think that would be pretty cool. So we've sort of worked out the logistics in terms of where various CBW trucks would be parked and what the police and fire response would be, where we would direct people. So since the approvals were already made for Town Day, we would need the select board to approve the closures of the streets outlined on this map in the memo. So basically, going down Shore Road from the high school through the Rotary, Main Street, up the Parkway, and then over towards the fields for June 6th with a rain date of June 5th. I don't know if the time, I think the time has been set. The high school was looking at doing it as one group versus two. And I don't have that exact time, but I think we can approve it for those days and we'll work on the times.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think if they could do it on the same day, I think that would be great. If the students were to march through Town Day, I think that would be great. But if they want to keep it on the separate day, then we'll only see that if it rains. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm fine with it.
All right.
So I move that we allow closure of the streets outlined in the memo presented, including Shore Road, Main Street, and Mystic Valley Parkway for the purposes of Winchester High School promenade and commencement for on the dates of June 4th and 5th.
5th and, I'm sorry.
Did I say 5th and 6th?
5th and 6th, yeah.
5th and 6th.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano?
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Yes for me. Motion carries unanimously 5-0. So next item on the agenda is the warrant articles. I don't know if folks have taken a look at the memo that Mark submitted about the kind of non-standard articles there. We've got kind of a lot going on, so I don't know if there are any questions or comments about where things are. $19 and $20 would be contingent on the override, and
right.
We get a couple other changes there that we kind of dealt with tonight on the water sewer rates and transfer station improvements. So
seems to be shaping up.
Any questions? We don't have to, vote anything yet, so we'll just kind of update it for the next meeting. And we can move. Is there anything else that I skipped? Lisa, I didn't know if you wanted to kind of update us on anything in particular.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually a great day to have virtually no updates, but I just want to remind folks that we still have our COVID testing clinics. The next ones are, or the next one, I should say, is this Thursday, the 25th from 3:30 to 5:30. It is $20 per test, cash or check made out to the town of Winchester. It's open to residents, town employees, non-residents who work in town. We will waive fees in hardship cases. You just have to contact the health department. That's health, DEPT, at winchester.us.
So I'll go ahead and move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor? I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano?
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And yes for me. Motion carries unanimously 5-0. So I think that we've covered our agenda unless I'm missing something. Does anybody see anything that I forgot? So we will I guess we can adjourn from this meeting. We do still have executive session business that we have to handle that will be completed by 10:15 at the latest. So we can, I'll take a motion to adjourn to executive session.
So I move that we adjourn to executive session and then,
Second.
And so
well,
just
I
as a
move, can I withdraw that motion? I'm sorry.
no, that's it. Once you've made the motion, Susan, I have to stick with it.
One of these
just
days
a-
I'll get one of these straight, maybe. I was going to say, if I can withdraw that motion, I would move that we move back into executive session and then adjourn from executive session.
Second.
all in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano,
Yes.
Jackie,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
and yes for me, just kind of a point of order here. We will be returning to the original Zoom that was sent over from Patty. So we're not going to be staying on.
We're not staying on this one?
No, because this was a public
okay.
Zoom. So we'll return to the little one. So I'll give everyone a couple minutes to kind of find that again, and we'll see you there.
Sorry, just wanted to check on, we don't have to do the consent agenda tonight?
We did.
We just did it.
We did.
Yeah,
Yep.
we did.
We just kind of blew through it.
We just approved it as is.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, my internet is horrible, as you can probably tell. So
No, you voted for it. We got you. All right, we'll see everyone.
No worries.
In a minute. And as I said, 10:15 is the cutoff. We'll see you there.
Okay.
Bye.